Hi folks, welcome back to Lonely Horde Guitars. Today we're gonna go over my process for sort of doing the rough nut for an acoustic guitar. Generally what I do is I kind of get it into, probably the 80 or 90% mark on where it's going to be before I do the first string up of the guitar. But then as you figure out what your intonation is and, get set in the string height and all that kind of stuff. There's going to be some fine tuning and I'm going to come back and adjust it and contour it maybe a little bit more and cut the grooves a little deeper, that kind of thing. But this is how I get it going for that first string up. Now, generally, this is just a plain old bone blank. I try and find sort of the smoothest side, and that's where we'll start sanding. And basically just trying to get one smooth side here. I'll use, a big flat surface or, a nice flat surface. This using the bandsaw, sometimes I'll use the table saw and go at it until I got something smooth, just using a sheet of 220 sandpaper here. You can almost think of it the same way you would deal with a piece of lumber. You're going to go hit it with the joiner first to get one side flat, and then you're going to build off of that to flatten and shape the other sides that you need. Okay, that guy's pretty flat now, so we're good. He's smooth. Next thing we want to do is we want to make this perpendicular side flat so that when we put the nut in, this is flat against the fretboard, this is flat against the neck. But to do that, if I just sit like here, I could be already cocked a little bit. So what I really want to do is I want to make this flat or perpendicular to this surface. So what I'll do is I'll grab a chunk of lumber that I know is square. So, and then I'll use that to be kind of like the fence on a joiner. We want to be pressed up against that and then work to create a nice perpendicular side. And it doesn't usually take too long. Usually there's like a cleaner side and a rougher side when I get these. Pick the side that's closest. Give yourself the least amount of work. All right, so now we've got two flat sides. They are nice and perpendicular to each other. And let's go on to the next steps. Next step is we want to figure out sort of the rough shape of the nut. Turns out this side's actually pretty smooth, so we're just gonna put that up against the edge of the fretboard. And then I've got a pencil here that is split in half, and it needs to be longer so that it'll rest on at least 2 frets. And use that to draw our radius. And then just a nice thin pencil to sort of figure out where we're going to be on the other side. And now we have kind of a rough shape. This will end up getting contoured in a little bit. But that gives us a place to cut and get rid of the bulk of the extra bone that we don't need. Now we'll come over here to the scroll saw and we'll go ahead and try and cut out the bulk of all this. Okay, so we've got big chunks of it. We will, of course, fine-tune this with sand to sort of ease up on the line. Actually, by the time you're finally said and done, the treble side's going to be lower than the bass side. But for now, this is a good place to start. Now we're back to our flat surface and a chunk of sandpaper. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ease up on this sideline here. I'll keep checking it occasionally to make sure that I'm not going too far. So I want this exactly the width of the neck, and no bigger and no smaller. And then we'll sort of do sort of curved strokes on it to get the profile along the top. Okay, so we're starting to come into the line here, so we'll just do a quick little double check. Go up on our neck. Oh yeah, we still got plenty of space. All right, so now we've erased our line. There's still a bit of play in there. The bottom's pretty good, so we're just gonna taper the top a little bit. All right, that's looking pretty good. So next step, smooth out that radius. Now this is 220. I'm gonna actually kick that up to about a 150, I think, to do this, because I need to make more of a difference. Kind of want to roll over the edges. We are going to taper off the back of the nut. I haven't flattened the back of the nut yet, so now it's probably kind of a good time to take care of that. All right. And then ultimately we will also put a bevel on that so the string comes over towards the tuners. It's not cutting a deep groove. Okay, so this is pretty good for sort of our rough start. So the next step is we want to lay out where we're going to cut our string slots. Now I do a 1 9/16 center of string to center of string for my acoustics, and I am using this string spacing ruler that kind of, it weighs more towards the bass side in terms of spacing than it does to the treble side. It's subtle, and I'm not sure that it really makes a whole lot of difference. I have also just done straight up, equal spacing. But in this case, I've marked here where 1 9/16 gives me the right gap. I lay out my ruler, just kind of center it on here between the spots that I'm not using, and just mark them out. And then I will take a square and extend them all the way. So that gives me that. I'm not sure the camera's going to pick that up. Hit it with the square, and there we go. Now the other thing I've done in the past, 1 9/16 divides evenly so that you have 5/16 gap between each string. So if you are doing an equal spacing, it's very easy to figure out where your ends are going to be, and then use something like calipers or just a ruler and lay out your lines. There's a bunch of different ways. I've done all kinds of different things. This is just the current thing that I'm doing. I've laid it out with a ruler. I've laid it out with calipers. I've done equal spacing. I've done weighted spacing. I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of difference either way. This is just how I'm doing it today. And finally, it's time to cut some slots. So we use the square. We've got lines all the way up here. I want to do is I want to kind of get a notch centered on the spot. And then what I like to do, this might be kind of hard to see on camera, is use the square to make sure that my slot then extends across the nut square. Very easy, particularly on these little thin ones, to twist a bit when you're first getting going. And once you've got the slot in here, then you're in pretty good shape. Sometimes I'll use a thinner one to get it going and then come in with the appropriate sized one once I'm sure that I'm right on the line. If you get one of these thicker files, trying to center it on the line is hard, at least for my old eyes. So I come in with the thin one, make sort of a guideline, and then come in with the thicker one to finish the slot to its appropriate size. All right, so we're going to do this on the second one here, just like we did the previous. And here we're not going, this doesn't have to be perfect. So this nut is going to be adjusted once we actually get some strings on it. This is more just to get us started. So you want to go in straight and then roll it off towards the back so that you don't have a string coming off the nut but kind of rolls around the back of the nut towards the tuners. And that's about it. So I'll continue cutting this. I'll take it down just a little bit below the line here that originally did our profile. That is not going to be the ultimate height. That will be determined once I get into the guitar and see how much, I want to see how high it is above that first fret just to make sure that it's right. But I usually get strings on it to see how it's behaving before I cut the nut to the final height. This is just to give me something that I can string up and get rolling through that process. If this is the kind of content you like, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.